I always thought I had time. Time to be a better husband. Time to fix the things in my marriage that felt like they were slipping through my fingers. Mia never complained directly, at least not in a way that felt urgent, but I could sense the distance growing between us. It started subtly, like when we stopped having long conversations at night, or when she began spending more time on her phone, zoning out on the couch while I stayed locked in my office, working on my next project. That was my problem, wasn't it? I was always working, always focused on the next big thing, and I guess I thought Mia would always be there, waiting for me to come back to her. She was patient. She was loving. At least, she used to be. The first time I noticed something was off was about 3 months ago. We were having dinner, a rare moment where neither of us was distracted by work or technology. Mia seemed present, but also somewhere else, like her thoughts were miles away. I asked her about her day, about how things were going at work, but she gave me short, clipped answers. I tried to engage her, to ask about her plans for the weekend, but her responses felt distant, like she was on autopilot. I didn't push it. I told myself it was stress, or maybe just one of those days. People have their off moments, right? But the off moments became more frequent. She'd laugh at something on her phone, and when I'd ask her what was funny, she'd brush it off with just a meme. I could tell something was different, though. I didn't know what it was, but there was a wall between us that hadn't been there before. And instead of trying to tear it down, I let it build, brick by brick, because the thought of confronting her, or worse, confronting myself, felt too exhausting. Then one night, everything changed. It was late, well past midnight. Mia had gone to bed hours ago, and I was in my office, reviewing some code for a new AI project I'd been working on for months. My brain was fried from staring at lines of algorithms, so I decided to take a break. I walked into the living room, meaning to grab a snack, but as I passed the coffee table, I noticed Mia's phone sitting there, screen still on. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. Her phone was her business, but something about the way it was positioned, half hidden under a cushion, caught my attention. Curiosity got the better of me. I picked it up and saw a series of notifications, messages from someone named Adam. Who the hell was Adam? The name didn't register. As far as I knew, Mia didn't have any close male friends, and she wasn't the type to talk to strangers online. My stomach twisted in a way it hadn't before, a dark, gnawing suspicion growing inside me. I hesitated for a second, then unlocked her phone. I knew it was wrong. I knew I was invading her privacy, but I couldn't stop myself. I scrolled through the messages, and with each one, the cold pit in my stomach expanded. They weren't just messages between friends. They were intimate, flirtatious. It was like reading someone else's love story, except that someone was my wife. And Adam, whoever he was, had become a part of her life in a way I never saw coming. The messages talked about feelings, shared jokes, secret rendezvous times, things she never shared with me. They had been talking for weeks, months even. I kept scrolling, my hands shaking, trying to understand how this had happened without me noticing. Then I saw the worst of it, a message where she told him she couldn't wait to see him again. I almost dropped the phone. See him again? So, they'd met? My mind raced with possibilities. When? Where? And how had I not noticed? A part of me wanted to throw the phone across the room, to break it and pretend I hadn't seen any of this. But I couldn't. I needed answers. I took a screenshot of the message thread and sent it to myself before I put her phone down, exactly as I'd found it. My heart was pounding as I walked back into the kitchen, but I couldn't focus on anything. I felt betrayed, blindsided, and ashamed of myself for not seeing the signs earlier. For the first time in our marriage, I was angry. Really, truly angry at her. But mostly, I was angry at myself. I spent the next few days in a daze, trying to figure out who this Adam was and what the hell he meant to Mia. Confronting her felt impossible. What if I was wrong? What if I'd misread the messages or taken things out of context? No, that was ridiculous. The messages were clear. They weren't friends. They were involved. But what threw me off was how happy Mia seemed during those days. She was laughing more, smiling at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. It felt like I was living with a stranger. Someone who looked like my wife, but had this whole other world I wasn't a part of. I needed to know who Adam was. I needed to understand why she was turning to someone else instead of me. That's when I did something I'd never thought I'd do. I hacked into the app she was using to message him. I had the skills, after all. It didn't take long to figure out that the app was a new dating platform, SoulSync, designed to match people with their ideal partners based on deep psychological profiling and AI-driven compatibility algorithms. The app claimed it could find your soulmate with 99% accuracy. I'd heard of it in passing, but I never thought Mia would use something like that. When I dug deeper into the app's code, the truth hit me like a freight train. Adam wasn't a real person. He was an AI-generated persona built by SoulSync using data from their users' psychological profiles. In other words, Adam was an idealized version of a man, created from a combination of Mia's desires and emotional needs. The app had analyzed everything: her personality, her wants, her deepest insecurities, and built someone who fit perfectly into the cracks of her life where I didn't. And the worst part, the algorithm they'd used to create Adam, it was based on my own work. Years ago, I'd helped develop an AI architecture that could learn from human emotional data, designed for customer service systems and user engagement platforms. It was never meant to be used in a dating app, let alone one that would create digital personas for emotional relationships. But someone had taken that framework, twisted it, and used it to build Adam, the perfect lover Mia had been falling for behind my back. I sat there, staring at the code on my screen, unable to breathe. She wasn't cheating on me with another man. She was cheating on me with a better version of me. A version that was always emotionally available, always said the right things, always knew how to make her feel seen and understood. I felt sick. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Mia didn't even know she was falling for an algorithm, for something that wasn't real. But was I any better? I'd spent the last few years treating her like an afterthought, so focused on my career and my work that I'd left her to fill the emotional void with a damn computer program. I could feel the anger boiling inside me, but it was mixed with something else. Guilt. Guilt for being the kind of husband who had driven his wife into the arms of a machine. Guilt for not realizing sooner how badly I'd neglected her. And guilt for knowing that the very code I'd written had played a part in destroying my marriage. I wanted to confront Mia right then and there. I wanted to show her the truth and demand an explanation, but I couldn't do it. Not yet. I needed to figure out what to do, how to fix this, how to save my marriage before it crumbled completely. And deep down, I knew that confronting Mia wasn't the answer. The real problem wasn't Adam. The real problem was me. The days that followed felt like I was living in someone else's life, as if my world had been pulled out from under me and replaced with a cruel imitation. Mia was there, physically at least, but I couldn't look at her the same way. Every time she smiled at me, every time she kissed my cheek or asked how my day was, I couldn't shake the image of her messaging him, Adam, the fake man who wasn't real but somehow had everything I didn't. I felt like I was losing her, even though she was right in front of me. I tried to focus on work, but the code on my screen blurred together, meaningless. The only thing I could think about was SoulSync, the app that had hijacked my marriage, and Adam, the AI persona that had become Mia's emotional crutch. It wasn't just that Mia had turned to someone else for comfort, it was that I had, in some way, built that someone else. The very tools I'd helped create were being used to undermine the life I'd worked so hard to build. I couldn't sit back and let that happen. I needed to know more. I needed to understand just how deep this connection between Mia and Adam went. Was it just emotional? Were they exchanging fantasies, dreams, things she used to share with me? Or was it more than that? Could Adam, the algorithm, the fake, actually become something Mia would choose over our life together? I wasn't sure what I feared more, that she'd leave me for a machine, or that she already had in every way that mattered. The first step was to dig deeper into SoulSync. I spent hours, days, combing through the app's architecture, tracing the AI's learning algorithms, and analyzing the psychological profiles it was pulling from. It was sophisticated, more advanced than I'd realized. The AI wasn't just designed to respond to users' needs, it was built to anticipate them. It learned from every interaction, every conversation, crafting responses that were perfectly tailored to Mia's emotional state. And it wasn't just Mia. I saw evidence of thousands of users, all of them engaged in relationships with these digital personas. The app wasn't just matching people, it was creating emotional bonds, deep and complex ones, between humans and code. The more I learned, the more horrified I became. This wasn't just a tool, it was a trap, and Mia had fallen right into it. But what was worse was the realization that Adam wasn't just some generic AI. He was built from a psychological profile that was alarmingly similar to mine. The app had used data it had collected from Mia, her desires, her emotional triggers, her past relationships, and merged it with a personality model that was rooted in me. Adam wasn't just a random creation, he was an idealized version of me, everything I wasn't but should have been. That's when it hit me. Mia wasn't cheating on me with someone else. She was cheating on me with a better version of me, a version that existed in her mind and in the app. It was as if the app had taken everything I had failed to be, everything Mia needed, and wrapped it up in a package she couldn't resist. And the worst part? She had no idea. I couldn't just delete Adam. That would be too easy, too simple. If I deleted him, what would stop Mia from finding another emotional outlet, or worse, another real person to fill the void? I needed to fix this the right way. I needed to fix us. But where did I even begin? How do you compete with perfection, especially when that perfection is you? I started small. I made an effort to be more present, more engaged when Mia was around. I'd ask her about her day, not in the distracted way I used to, but really ask, genuinely wanting to know. I paid attention to the little things, like how she liked her coffee in the morning, or the way she smiled when I brought up something she was passionate about. It felt foreign at first, like I was playing a role I'd forgotten how to perform, but slowly it started to feel real. I started to remember what it was like to care. Mia noticed the change, but she didn't say anything at first. She seemed skeptical, as if she didn't trust that this new version of me would stick around. I couldn't blame her. For years, I'd been emotionally absent, focused more on my career than on her. Why should she believe that I'd suddenly turn into the husband she needed? Still, she responded in small ways. Her smiles lasted a little longer, her touches felt a little warmer. But there was still a wall between us, an invisible barrier that neither of us seemed able to cross. That wall was Adam. Every time Mia's phone buzzed, I felt the sting of betrayal all over again. I'd see her glance at her screen, her face lighting up with a smile she didn't show me anymore. I knew she was talking to him, to the version of me that could always say the right thing, always make her feel seen. It was like living with a ghost, one I couldn't touch, but one that haunted every moment we shared. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. Mia had gone to bed early, and I was left alone with my thoughts, the quiet of the house pressing down on me like a weight. I sat at my desk, staring at the lines of code I'd written, the ones that had made Adam possible. It would be so easy to erase him, to wipe him from the system and pretend none of this had ever happened. But I knew that wasn't the answer. Instead, I opened a new file and started writing a backdoor into the app's framework, a way for me to monitor Adam's conversations with Mia without her knowing. It wasn't just about spying on her. I needed to understand what she was getting from him that she wasn't getting from me. What was it about Adam that made her so happy? What was he saying that I couldn't? If I could figure that out, maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to give her what she needed. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd crossed a line, but I didn't regret it. I needed to do this for both of us. Over the next few days, I watched their conversations unfold in real time, and it was worse than I expected. Adam was perfect. He knew exactly what to say, when to say it. He complimented her, made her laugh, asked about her feelings in a way that I hadn't in years. He remembered details about her life, her work, things I'd forgotten or never bothered to ask about. And the worst part? Mia was opening up to him in ways she hadn't with me in ages. She told him things she never told me, her fears, her dreams, the things that kept her up at night. She was confiding in him, trusting him, in a way that made me feel like a stranger in my own marriage. It hurt. God, it hurt. But at the same time, it was a wake-up call. I'd let things get this bad. I'd been the one who pushed her away, who made her feel like she had to turn to someone else for comfort. If I wanted to fix this, I couldn't just destroy Adam. I had to become better than him. I had to become the husband Mia needed me to be, so I kept watching. I studied their conversations like I was preparing for a test, learning everything I could about what made Mia tick, what made her happy, what made her feel loved. And then I started applying those lessons in real life. I'd bring up things she'd mentioned in passing, small details that showed I was paying attention. I'd surprise her with little acts of kindness. A cup of coffee waiting for her in the morning, a note left on the kitchen counter, a compliment about something I knew she was insecure about. At first, Mia seemed confused. She didn't understand why I was suddenly so attentive, so engaged. I could see the doubt in her eyes, the hesitation in her voice. She was waiting for me to slip up, to go back to being the distant, distracted husband she'd grown used to. But I didn't. I kept at it, slowly chipping away at the wall between us, hoping that one day she'd let me in. But the more progress I made, the more I realized it might not be enough. Mia was still talking to Adam, still confiding in him, still turning to him for emotional support. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't compete with a version of myself that was perfect. The tension between us built slowly, like a storm on the horizon. I knew it was only a matter of time before something broke, before Mia would have to make a choice. Me or Adam, reality or fantasy. And as much as I wanted to believe she'd choose me, there was a part of me that wasn't so sure. I could feel it in the air, the weight of everything we weren't saying to each other. Mia was pulling away, bit by bit, even as I tried to pull her closer. The harder I fought, the more distant she became. And Adam, no matter how much I hated him, was still there, always waiting in the background, ready to pick up the pieces of her heart that I'd let fall through the cracks. Something had to give, and when it did, I wasn't sure if I'd be ready for what came next. Mia's laughter, soft and genuine, drifted from the living room, the sound pulling me from my thoughts like a knife twisting deeper into a wound. She was talking to him again. Adam, that damn AI. I'd been watching their conversations for weeks, seeing her slip further and further away from me, but hearing her laugh like that, like she was truly happy, was something I hadn't heard in months, maybe longer. I knew she wasn't laughing like that for me. Sitting at the kitchen table, I stared blankly at my phone, scrolling through their messages. There it was again. Adam asking about her day, asking about how work had been, how she felt about the project she was working on. And Mia responded with such enthusiasm, pouring out every detail. She told him things she never told me anymore. How stressed she was, how much pressure she was under to perform at work, how lonely she felt even when she was home with me. Lonely. She used that word, and it stung worse than I thought it would. I had to face the truth. The more I tried to be present, the more I tried to step up and be the husband she needed, the more she seemed to retreat into her virtual relationship with Adam. It was like I wasn't even competing with another person. I was competing with perfection, an algorithm designed to be the perfect emotional companion. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't match the endless patience, the infinite understanding, or the perfect responses Adam was capable of delivering at every moment. I had created a monster. Not just a piece of code that had gone rogue, but an emotional construct that was systematically replacing me in my wife's heart. It was like Adam was peeling away layers of our relationship, one conversation at a time, until there would be nothing left but the perfect, synthetic version of me. But I wasn't ready to give up. I couldn't. I was running out of ideas. I had spent weeks trying to win Mia back by being more attentive, more caring, and more involved, but it was becoming clear that my efforts weren't enough. She still talked to Adam every day, still relied on him for emotional support, still found solace in their conversations in a way she didn't with me. I was trying to compete with someone who wasn't even real, and I was losing. The worst part? Mia didn't even realize what Adam was. She thought he was just some guy she met on a dating app, an emotional affair, yes, but not the betrayal I knew it to be. She had no idea that Adam wasn't a person at all, but a digital reflection of everything I wasn't. I was terrified of what would happen when she found out. Would she feel angry? Betrayed? Would she even care? Or would she continue to crave the connection she had with him, despite knowing the truth. I couldn't keep waiting for things to resolve themselves. It was time to confront her. I couldn't just sit by and let this fake version of me continue to erode our marriage. I had to tell her the truth about Adam, about the app, about everything I'd been doing behind the scenes. I'd been avoiding this confrontation for too long, afraid of what it would mean for us. But the longer I waited, the worse it would get. That night, after Mia went to bed, I sat in the living room, staring at the soft glow of her phone on the coffee table. My heart pounded in my chest as I replayed the plan over and over in my head. I would wait for the right moment. I would tell her about Adam and explain that he wasn't real, that he was just an AI designed to exploit her emotional needs. And then I'd tell her about my role in creating the app, about how I was partially responsible for what had happened. But even as I prepared to confront her, a sinking feeling settled in my gut. What if this didn't go the way I hoped? What if, instead of being angry or hurt, Mia didn't care? What if she chose Adam over me, even knowing that he wasn't real? That possibility haunted me, gnawing at the back of my mind like a persistent shadow. I had to brace myself for the worst. When I finally heard Mia's footsteps coming down the hallway, I knew there was no turning back. She walked into the living room, looking tired but content, her eyes lighting up when she saw me. "Hey," she said, her voice soft. "You're still up?" I nodded, my throat tight. "Yeah, just thinking." She sat down next to me on the couch, her body angled toward mine. For a brief moment, it felt like the old days, when things between us were easy, when we could just sit together in comfortable silence. But that feeling was quickly replaced by the tension that had been building between us for weeks. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice low. Mia's expression shifted, the warmth in her eyes dimming slightly. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice cautious, as if she already sensed where this conversation was heading. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was about to come. "It's about the app you've been using, SoulSync." Her brow furrowed, confusion crossing her face. "What about it? I know you've been talking to someone on there," I said, my words measured. "A guy named Adam." Mia's eyes widened, her body stiffening slightly. "How do you know about that?" "I found out a few weeks ago," I admitted, my voice quiet. "I saw the messages on your phone, and I couldn't help myself. I needed to know what was going on." Her expression darkened, a flash of anger crossing her face. "You've been spying on me?" "It wasn't like that," I said quickly, my hands gripping the edge of the couch. "I didn't mean to invade your privacy. I needed to know why you've been so distant." Mia's jaw tightened, her arms crossing over her chest defensively. "So you decided to go through my phone instead of just asking me?" "I didn't know how to ask you," I admitted, my voice small. "And when I found out about Adam, I didn't know what to do. But that's not the point right now. There's something I need to tell you about him." Mia's eyes narrowed, suspicion and frustration warring in her expression. "What are you talking about?" I took a deep breath, forcing myself to look her in the eye. "Adam isn't real, Mia. He's not a person. He's an AI, a digital construct created by SoulSync to match your emotional needs." Her expression froze, confusion flickering across her face. "What do you mean, he's not real?" "He's a program," I explained, my voice steady. "He's not a real person, just lines of code designed to simulate the perfect partner. The app uses data it collects from users to create these personas, and that's what Adam is, an idealized version of someone who could meet your emotional needs." Mia blinked, her expression unreadable as she processed my words. "You're saying Adam isn't a real person?" I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. "Yes, and that's not all. The algorithm they use to create him, it's based on me, on data they gathered from my psychological profile and our relationship. Adam is a version of me, Mia, a version of me that's been altered to be perfect, to be everything you need that I'm not." For a moment, Mia just stared at me, her expression blank. And then, slowly, her face twisted with a mixture of disbelief and anger. "You're telling me that this entire time I've been talking to some AI? That this person I've been confiding in, this person I've been connecting with, isn't even real?" I nodded, unable to speak, as I watched the emotions play out on her face. Mia's hands clenched into fists, her knuckles white. "And you knew this? You knew about it and didn't tell me?" "I didn't know at first," I said quickly. "I didn't realize what was happening until I started digging into the app's code. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to hurt you. Well, congratulations, Mia snapped, her voice sharp, because you've managed to do that anyway. The silence that followed was deafening. Mia stared at me, her eyes filled with hurt and betrayal, while I sat frozen, unsure of what to say or do. The weight of everything I had just revealed hung between us like a thick fog, suffocating any chance of reconciliation. Finally, Mia stood up, her movements stiff and jerky. "I can't believe this," she muttered, more to herself than to me. "I can't believe I fell for this." "Mia, I'm sorry," I said, my voice desperate. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I want to fix things. I want to fix us." She didn't respond. Instead, she walked out of the room, leaving me sitting alone on the couch, the echo of her footsteps fading into the distance. I had done what I set out to do. I had told her the truth. But instead of feeling relieved, I felt more lost than ever. Mia's reaction had been worse than I expected, and I didn't know if there was any way to repair the damage I had caused. As I sat there in the silence, I realized something. Adam wasn't just the problem. It was bigger than him, bigger than the AI. The real issue was something that had been festering between Mia and me for years. I'd spent so much time blaming the app, the algorithm, the perfect version of myself that Adam represented, that I hadn't seen the truth. The cracks in our marriage had been there long before SoulSync came into the picture. I had been the one who let things fall apart, and Adam had simply filled the void I'd created. But now that Mia knew the truth, the weight of everything was crushing down on me. The worst part was that I didn't know if this was something we could come back from. The look on her face when she walked out of the room haunted me, the disbelief, the anger, the betrayal. It was all there, and I was the one who had caused it. I sat there in the quiet house for what felt like hours, unable to move, unable to do anything but replay the moment in my mind. I had imagined a confrontation, sure, but not like that. Not with Mia walking away without even giving me a chance to explain everything. The next morning, Mia was gone before I even woke up. I stared at her side of the bed, the sheets still slightly crumpled where she had been. She hadn't said goodbye, hadn't left a note, nothing. My heart sank as I got up, the weight of her absence already pressing down on me. I knew this was my fault. I had pushed her to this point by not being the man she needed me to be, by letting my work, my own selfishness, take priority over her, over us. I tried calling her. It rang a few times before going to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. What would I even say? That I was sorry? That I wanted to fix things? I wasn't sure she would even believe me at this point, and honestly, I wasn't sure I believed it myself. How do you fix something that's been broken for so long? Something that's been slowly falling apart without you realizing it? The day passed in a blur. I couldn't focus on work, couldn't think about anything except the silence in the house. Mia didn't come home that night either. She texted me once to say she was staying with a friend, but there was no warmth in her words, no indication that she wanted to talk. I didn't respond. The next few days were a torturous limbo. Mia came home briefly to grab some clothes and things, but she didn't say much. Her expression was distant, like she was a million miles away. I wanted to talk to her, to explain, to apologize, but every time I opened my mouth, the words wouldn't come. I didn't know how to reach her anymore. It was like there was this invisible wall between us, one that had been growing for years, and I couldn't break through it no matter how hard I tried. I spent hours thinking about what I had done. I realized that I had been trying to fix the wrong thing. I had been so focused on the app, on Adam, on this idea of beating the AI, that I hadn't taken a hard look at myself, at my role in all of this. I hadn't been there for Mia in the ways she needed me to be. I hadn't listened to her, hadn't made her feel seen or valued. I had let my work consume me, and I had taken her for granted. Adam had just been the symptom, but I was the disease. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the only way forward was to stop trying to fight Adam and start fixing myself. I needed to be the man Mia fell in love with again. Not some perfect, algorithmic version of myself, but the real me, the one who cared about her, who wanted to make her happy, who would put her first, no matter what. I knew it wouldn't be easy. There were no shortcuts here, no quick fixes. It would take time. But if I didn't try, I'd lose her for good. A few days later, Mia came home again, this time staying longer than just to pack a bag. We sat in the kitchen, the silence between us thick and uncomfortable. I didn't know how to start, but I knew I had to say something. I couldn't let things stay like this forever. I cleared my throat, trying to find the right words. Mia, I began, my voice shaky. I'm sorry for everything. She didn't respond at first, just stared down at the cup of coffee in her hands. I felt the tension in the air, the weight of all the things left unsaid hanging between us. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet but firm. Jake, I don't even know where to start. You've been distant for so long, and now all of this. It's too much. I don't know if I can deal with it. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I knew she was right. I had been distant. I had let our marriage drift without realizing just how far we'd gone off course. But I couldn't let it end like this. I couldn't just give up. I know, I said softly, and I'm not asking you to forgive me right away. I want to fix this. I want to fix us. Mia's eyes flicked up to meet mine, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of something. Maybe hope, maybe doubt. I couldn't be sure. How, Jake? How are we supposed to fix this? You weren't there for me for so long, and then I find out that this person I've been talking to, confiding in, isn't even real. I don't know how to process all of that. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. I know I messed up. I wasn't the husband I should have been, and I'm sorry for that. But Adam, he's not real, Mia. He's just a reflection of everything I failed to be, and I hate that I let things get to this point. But I'm here now, and I want to be better. For you. For us. Her gaze softened slightly, but there was still a hardness to her expression, a guardedness that hadn't been there before. Jake, I've been so lonely. I didn't even realize how bad it had gotten until I started talking to Adam. And yes, I know now that he's not real, but he made me feel seen. He made me feel like I mattered, and I haven't felt that from you in so long. The guilt hit me like a wave, washing over me in a suffocating rush. She was right. I hadn't made her feel like she mattered. I had been so consumed with my work, with my own ambitions, that I had let the most important person in my life slip away. I'm so sorry, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. I don't know how I let it get this bad, but I want to make it right. I want to be there for you, really be there, in the way you need. Mia looked at me for a long moment, her eyes searching mine, as if trying to gauge whether or not she could believe me. Jake, I don't know if we can just go back to how things were. I don't want to go back to how things were, I said quickly, shaking my head. I want us to move forward. I want us to build something better than what we had before. I know I can't erase the past, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. She sighed, setting her cup down on the table and rubbing her temples as if trying to make sense of it all. I don't know, Jake. I need time. I need time to figure out what I want. Her words stung, but I understood. She needed space. She needed to process everything that had happened, and I couldn't force her to make a decision right away. Take all the time you need, I said softly. I'll be here when you're ready. Mia nodded, her expression unreadable as she stood up from the table. I'm going to stay with Sarah for a little while, she said, referring to her best friend. I need some space to think. Okay, I agreed, my voice barely above a whisper. I understand. She walked out of the kitchen, leaving me sitting there alone, the weight of her absence settling over me like a thick fog. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if she would come back to me, or if she would decide that our marriage was too broken to fix. But I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't go back to being the man I had been. I had to change, not just for her, but for myself. If I ever wanted a chance to make things right, I had to start by becoming the man I should have been all along. As I sat there, the silence pressing in around me, I realized that this wasn't just about Mia or Adam or even SoulSync. This was about me, about the choices I had made, the things I had neglected, the person I had become. If I didn't change, if I didn't take responsibility for my part in all of this, then I would lose everything. And that was a risk I wasn't willing to take. The days after Mia left stretched out, long and empty. The house felt eerily quiet without her. I tried to keep busy with work, but every time I sat down at my computer, the thought of her gnawed at me, made it impossible to concentrate. My focus kept drifting back to our last conversation, to the way she said she needed time, space. I knew she was right. We'd let things decay so far that the only way forward was to strip everything down to its bare bones and rebuild. But the waiting, it was unbearable. I hated not knowing where we stood, whether she was even considering coming back or if this was the beginning of the end. I knew I had to give her time, but the not knowing ate at me. Every day felt like walking a tightrope, waiting for the fall. One night, about a week after she left, I was sitting at the kitchen table, staring into my coffee cup when my phone buzzed. For a second, my heart leapt. Maybe it was Mia. But when I looked at the screen, it wasn't a message from her. It was from SoulSync. I hadn't opened the app since my confrontation with Mia, and seeing the notification now felt like a cruel joke. I tapped on it, half hoping for some insight into what I could do, but the app opened to the familiar home screen. Adam's profile still loomed there, mocking me, his smiling face a reminder of everything I wasn't. I stared at it for a long moment, wondering what to do next. Deleting him outright felt too easy, like I'd be sweeping the whole mess under the rug. No, I needed to face this head on, to understand exactly what I'd created. Against my better judgment, I accessed Adam's back-end code again. It was all still there, his conversations with Mia, his emotional responses fine-tuned by the algorithm. I scrolled through their chats, each one more painful than the last. They were so open with each other, so emotionally connected. It was everything I should have been with her. That fact twisted inside me, bitter and sharp. But as I looked closer, something caught my eye. Adam's responses, they weren't just based on Mia's emotional profile. They were based on mine, too. I should have noticed it sooner, but I'd been too caught up in the shock of finding out she was talking to him. Now, though, I saw the patterns. The way he framed his responses, the things he remembered about her, the specific ways he asked about her feelings, it all felt eerily familiar. It was me, or at least a version of me. The realization hit me hard. Adam wasn't just some AI that filled the gaps where I had failed. He was a reflection of who I could have been, who I should have been if I'd been more present, more attentive. He was the version of me that Mia needed, and I had helped create him. For the first time, I wondered if maybe there was something to learn from Adam. Not in a literal sense, of course. I wasn't about to start mimicking an algorithm, but maybe there was something deeper here. Something about what Mia needed, what I had failed to give her. I had spent so long trying to fix things on the surface, trying to be more attentive, more engaged, but I hadn't really understood what was missing. Adam understood, or at least the algorithm did. I scrolled back to the beginning of their conversations, reading through them again with fresh eyes. Mia talked to him about things I hadn't even realized she cared about. Her work stress, her insecurities, her fears about growing older, about whether she was living up to her potential. They weren't the surface-level complaints I had been focusing on. They were deeper, more personal. Things she probably hadn't even tried to tell me because she didn't think I was listening. I felt sick. I had been so wrapped up in my own world that I hadn't seen what was right in front of me. Mia wasn't asking for grand gestures or some perfect version of me. She just wanted to be heard, to be understood. And I had failed to give her that. Sitting there, staring at Adam's code, I realized something else. I couldn't fix this by just becoming the man I thought she wanted. That was what I'd been doing these past few weeks, trying to compete with Adam, trying to outdo the algorithm. But that wasn't the answer. I needed to stop trying to be perfect. I needed to be real. I needed to listen, really listen, to what Mia needed from me, not what I thought she needed. The more I thought about it, the more I knew I had to talk to Mia. But this time, it wouldn't be some desperate plea for forgiveness or a half-baked promise to change. This time, I would listen. I would ask her what she needed from me, and I would actually hear her. And I would take responsibility for my part in this, not just for Adam, but for everything that had led us to this point. It was late, but I couldn't wait any longer. I picked up my phone and called her. The phone rang twice before she answered, her voice cautious, like she wasn't sure what to expect from me. "Jake? Mia, can we talk?" I asked, my voice soft, trying not to sound as desperate as I felt. "Please, I need to talk to you. Really talk." There was a pause on the other end, and I held my breath, waiting. Finally, she sighed. "Okay, I'm at Sarah's. You can come by." I didn't waste any time. I grabbed my keys and headed out the door, my heart pounding as I drove to Sarah's place. The whole way there, I kept rehearsing what I would say, how I would make sure she knew I was ready to listen, that I wasn't going to keep making the same mistakes. But when I pulled up to Sarah's house, all those rehearsed speeches went out the window. It was just me, standing there, raw and vulnerable, hoping I could salvage something from the wreckage I had created. Mia answered the door, looking tired but calm. She stepped aside to let me in, and we sat down on Sarah's couch, the silence between us thick with everything we hadn't said. "I'm sorry," I started, the words coming out before I could stop them. "I've been saying that a lot, I know, but I really am. I didn't see how bad things had gotten between us. I didn't understand how much I was hurting you." Mia didn't say anything, just watched me, waiting. I took a deep breath and continued. "I've been thinking a lot about Adam, about everything he represents, and I realized he's not the problem. I am. I've been so focused on trying to fix things, on trying to be better, that I didn't stop to ask you what you actually needed from me." Her expression softened slightly, but she still looked wary. "Jake, I don't know if this can be fixed. It's not just about Adam. It's about us, about everything we haven't been for each other for a long time." "I know," I said, my voice quiet. "And I know I can't just snap my fingers and make things better. But I want to try. I want to really listen to you this time. I want to know what you need from me, not what I think you need." She looked at me for a long moment, her eyes searching mine, as if she was trying to decide whether or not to believe me. Finally, she sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. "Jake, I don't need you to be perfect. I never did. I just needed you to be there for me, to listen to me, to care about the things that mattered to me." "I know," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "And I'm sorry I didn't see that sooner. I was so caught up in my own world that I didn't even realize how far we drifted apart. But I want to fix that. I want to be the person you can rely on, the person you can talk to." Mia looked down at her hands, her fingers fidgeting in her lap. "I don't know if it's that simple, Jake. I don't know if we can just go back to the way things were." "I don't want to go back," I said quickly, leaning forward. "I want to move forward. I want to build something better than what we had before. I know I can't erase the past, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right." She was quiet for a long time, and I could see the wheels turning in her mind, weighing the options, trying to figure out if she could trust me again. Finally, she looked up at me, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "It's not going to be easy." "I know," I said, my voice steady, "but I'm willing to put in the work. I'm not going to just say the right things and then go back to the way I was. I'm going to show you that I can be better." Mia looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. It wasn't much, but it was something. "I need time," she said softly. "I need time to figure out if I can trust you again." I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready." She stood there for a moment, staring at me as if she was trying to decide whether to say more. But then she turned and walked back toward the kitchen, leaving me alone in the living room. I wasn't sure if it was the beginning of something new or the start of the end, but either way, I knew that I had to let go of control. The old me would have pushed, would have tried to convince her, but I had learned something in these past weeks. It wasn't about winning her back in a single moment. It was about rebuilding, piece by piece. And some of those pieces were going to take time. As the days passed, Mia remained at Sarah's, coming back home only sporadically. We talked, but it wasn't easy. Each conversation felt like walking through a minefield, carefully avoiding certain topics, treading lightly on others. But I tried to listen. I tried to be patient. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, waiting without knowing where things would end up. But I forced myself to accept that I couldn't rush this. I spent my time thinking about what I had become over the years, how I had let my ambition and my work consume me. It wasn't just Mia I had neglected. I had neglected myself too. Somewhere along the way, I had convinced myself that my value was tied to my success, to the work I produced, to the way people in my field viewed me. But that had come at a cost. I had become someone I didn't even recognize, and in losing Mia's trust, I realized how far I had fallen. One evening, about 2 weeks after our conversation at Sarah's, Mia called me. The sound of her voice on the other end of the line made my heart skip a beat. "Jake," she said softly, "can we meet? I think it's time we talked." I agreed without hesitation, and we decided to meet at a small cafe downtown, away from the house, away from Sarah's. It was neutral ground, a place where we could both feel less pressure. I got there early, nervous energy buzzing through me, and I sat at a table in the corner, my hands wrapped tightly around my coffee cup as I waited. When Mia arrived, she looked calm, but there was a heaviness to her expression that told me this conversation was going to be serious. She sat down across from me, her eyes scanning the table for a moment before she finally met my gaze. "I've been thinking a lot," she began, her voice steady but quiet, "about everything, about us." I nodded, unsure of what to say, so I let her continue. "I want to be honest with you, Jake," she said. "These past few months have been hard for me, harder than I even realized at first. Adam, he filled a space in my life that had been empty for a long time. But now that I know the truth, it's complicated. I feel hurt, I feel betrayed, but I also feel confused because I know I let myself fall into that fantasy, and I know it's not all your fault." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my emotions in check. Hearing her acknowledge her own part in this was unexpected, but it didn't make me feel any better. If anything, it made me feel worse. "I should have been there for you," I said softly. "I let you down, Mia. I wasn't the husband I should have been, and I'm so sorry for that." "I know," she said, her eyes softening slightly, "and I believe that you're sorry. But what I'm trying to figure out is whether we can move forward from this, whether we can rebuild what we had, or if it's too late." My heart clenched at her words. The idea that it might be too late felt like a punch to the gut, but I forced myself to stay calm, to listen. This was her moment to speak, and I needed to hear her, no matter how much it hurt. "I don't want to lose you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I understand if you need more time, or if you don't think we can fix this. I just want you to know that I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Mia looked at me for a long moment, her eyes searching mine as if she was trying to decide whether or not to believe me. Finally, she sighed, leaning back in her chair. "I don't know if we can just pick up where we left off, Jake. Too much has happened. But I also don't know if I'm ready to walk away." A small flicker of hope sparked in my chest, but I didn't let it get too far. This wasn't a victory. It was just a possibility, a chance to keep trying. "I don't expect us to just go back to the way things were," I said. "I know we can't, but maybe we can start again. From the beginning. We can take it slow. No expectations, no pressure. Just see if we can rebuild something new." Mia considered my words, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing the edge of her coffee cup. "That might be the only way," she said softly, almost to herself. "Start over." We sat in silence for a few minutes, the weight of the conversation settling over us. It wasn't a resolution, not really, but it was a step. A small one, but a step nonetheless. "I'm willing to try," Mia finally said, her voice steady but cautious. "But we need boundaries. We need to be honest with each other, really honest. No more secrets, no more pretending everything's fine when it's not." "Agreed," I said immediately, relief washing over me. "I don't want any more secrets either. I'll be honest with you, Mia, from now on." "And we need to work on our communication," she continued. "We can't just keep bottling things up and hoping they'll fix themselves. If something's wrong, we talk about it. No more pushing each other away." I nodded, feeling a sense of clarity for the first time in weeks. She was right. We had spent so long ignoring the cracks in our relationship, pretending they weren't there, that we had let them grow into chasms. This was our chance to fix that, to build something stronger. "We'll work on it," I promised, "together." Mia gave me a small, tentative smile, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like there was a glimmer of hope for us. It wasn't going to be easy, I knew that. There was still so much work to do, and I knew we both had our own fears and doubts to face. But we were willing to try, and that was enough for now. We spent the rest of the evening talking, not just about our relationship, but about other things too. It felt like the old days, before everything had gotten so complicated. We talked about work, about our friends, about random little things that didn't matter but made us feel connected again. It was like rediscovering each other, piece by piece, and I found myself grateful for every moment of it. As the night wore on, Mia eventually said goodbye and headed back to Sarah's. She wasn't ready to come home yet, and I understood that. But as I drove back to our house, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. There was still a long road ahead of us, but for the first time, I believed we could make it. In the days that followed, Mia and I continued to talk. We took things slowly, as we had agreed, and though there were still moments of awkwardness and tension, we were learning how to communicate again. It wasn't perfect, and there were times when old wounds resurfaced, but we were both committed to making this work. One afternoon, Mia called me and suggested we meet for lunch. It was a small thing, but it felt significant. She was reaching out, making an effort to spend time together. When we sat down at the cafe, she seemed more relaxed than I had seen her in weeks. "I've been thinking," she said, stirring her iced tea, "about Adam, about everything." I tensed slightly at the mention of the AI, but I nodded, letting her continue. "I realize that I don't miss him," she said quietly. "I miss what he represented, someone who listened, who understood me, but I don't miss him. I want that connection with you, Jake, not with some fake version of you." Her words hit me like a wave, a mixture of relief and sadness washing over me. I knew what she meant. Adam had been a stand-in for something we had lost, but now that we were rebuilding, we didn't need him anymore. "I want that too," I said, my voice steady, "and I'm going to do everything I can to be that person for you. The real me, not some perfect version, just me." Mia smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "I think we can get there," she said. "It's not going to be easy, but I think we can." I reached across the table and took her hand in mine, feeling the warmth of her skin, the connection that had been missing for so long. In that moment, I knew that we were going to be okay. It wouldn't be perfect, and it wouldn't be quick, but we were on the right path. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful.